Hey, it's Kenny with Helicopter Land Ground School. Going to do a few short videos for you over the next few days while we're editing and building the new maneuvers. And I asked Brian this morning, I said, what are some things that members are asking you about now that you've been working full time for 2.5 weeks and you've been taking phone calls and messages? And he came up with 3 things, and I'm going to cover 3 of those things the next 3 days. And the first one was, he said, first thing that popped up to his mind that he's getting asked more than anything is what to expect on a check ride. Okay, very common question. I've been hearing that question many times for 20 years, right? Of course, everybody wants to know what's going to be on the check ride. And I've preached this a million times, and I'll preach it again. It's called the Practical Test Standards. At some point in the future, it will become the ACS, the Airman Certification Standards. Probably not going to change a whole lot other than they'll add some more scenario-based things within that. But you should be working through the PTS. As an instructor, you need to be using it. As a student, you need to be using it. You want to know what's going to be on the check ride? You need to be going through the PTS. And I can't harp this enough. Super fast story. I was up doing some testing in Michigan, flying at a place, and I met this older gentleman, and he's like, hey, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I have this thing called Helicopter Land Ground School, and teach people the knowledge and the theory to get their ratings. And he's like, wow, well, kind of how'd you put that together? And I'm like, well, I basically used the PTS starting out because, people don't use the PTS enough, and students and instructors. And turns out this guy was an examiner of 40 years. And he said, oh my God, thank you, Kenny. Check rides for 40 years, what do I see? People not using the PTS, and it's a real problem. CFI's not using the PTS. So from a 40-year examiner, straight from the examiner, people aren't using the PTS enough. He even told me a story of a CFI that showed up for a CFI check ride, and when the examiner spoke of the PTS, the guy said, I've never used one. And this examiner was appalled, right? And he almost called the check ride off. And the guy said, well, I've studied so hard, and, I know my stuff. And he said, I let the guy continue. And he said he ended up actually doing okay. But he said, as an examiner of 40 years, the problem I see in check rides is people not using the PTS. So when you show up as a student, first thing I'm going to say is, where's your PTS at? And if you don't have one, I'm going to ask you why. And then I'm going to ask you to pull it out if you've got one, and I'm going to take a look at it. And I better see some, some bends and some wrinkles and some crinks. And if that thing is pristine, I'm going to say, you need to be working through that PTS. So you should be working through it with your instructor. Your instructor should be using it. And then you, as a student, as you're prepping, you need to be going through the PTS yourself. And you need to go through that thing step by step. You want to know what's going to be on the check ride? Use the PTS. And Helicopter Online Ground School, okay? So you're going through Helicopter Online Ground School, follows the Helicopter Flying Handbook. We talk about the PTS over and over and over and over. We talk about check rides. We talk about what's going to happen the day of. We talk about how to prepare. So you want another extra little tip on check rides? Top 10 check ride tips. Free PDF down below. Taz Chrisman, 2018 Flight Instructor of the Year, and I put together top 10 check ride tips. That's going to help you more than probably anything besides going through HOGS, going through the PTS. What trips people up on a check ride? It's stuff that you're not going to be expecting. Everybody worries about the knowledge, and you gotta have the knowledge, and you gotta study, and you gotta go through this stuff over and over and over again until it's concrete in your mind. Okay. Top 10 check ride tips. We compiled the top 10 things that Taz and I have seen in our 40 years of combined experience. What we see when a person shows up for a check ride, and the check ride doesn't start, or the check ride fails. We have the top 10 reasons in that, and it's that free PDF down below. Taz also spoke with examiners from the Las Vegas area where he's from, and he asked these examiners, went out and polled them, What are you seeing currently? What are the things that people are screwing up on a check ride? And that's a bonus section in that top 10 check ride tips. So I highly recommend that going down and checking out that PDF because it's free. You can download it, check it out, just read it, print it off if you like, whatever you want to do. It's free resource down below. Knowledge is power. Whatever resource you're using, study and go through that PTS. If you want to know what's going to be on the check ride, you need to go through the PTS. There's no secret. No secret. Many years ago, we would bring the examiner over. We used one from out of the area because we didn't have one in our local area. So I'd line up 2 check rides on a day. We'd fly over in an airplane, get him, bring him over, do the 2 check rides, flying back home. We're flying him back home, and the airplane pilot's a CFI, right? And so he asked the examiner, hey, really how hard is it to decide whether somebody passes or not, when you're given these check rides? And he's a real nice guy, but he was pretty stern when he said, ever heard of the PTS? And that was pretty much all he said, right? When my examiner does check ride, he has a printout of the PTS, lays it on the table. He doesn't have the book. He actually has the PTS printed in normal 8x11 form, and he sits there and flips through the pages. And that's your check ride. He goes through the PTS and picks questions from every area and checks your knowledge. So there's no secret. And I feel like a lot of times people are looking for that cheat way out, or that, well, what do I really got to know? Well, you know what? There's a lot of stuff available for this examiner, him or her, to ask you. What's going to be on the check ride? It's in the PTS, soon to be ACS. All right, do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell, leave your comments down below. Go get that free PDF down below. There's a free radio course down there, and also a free PDF of my #1 bestseller, Helicopter Check Ride. Go down below, check them out. Peace out.